What if everything you think you know about yourself is only scratching the surface? Beneath your everyday awareness lies a vast hidden world, a complex inner landscape shaped by forces you may never have noticed. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, believed that true self-awareness isn't just about being alert or mindful. It's about diving deep into the unconscious parts of your mind, facing the shadows you've hidden away, and discovering a wholeness you never imagined possible. This journey challenges everything you've been taught about identity and pushes you to confront uncomfortable truths. But it also offers a path to profound freedom, clarity, and authentic living. Are you ready to uncover the surprising answer to what it really means to be conscious? Have you ever stopped to question who you really are? Not your name, job, or roles, but your true self beneath the surface. Most people move through life assuming they fully understand who they are. They identify with their thoughts, memories, emotions, and roles in society. But what if that's just the surface layer? What if the person you believe yourself to be is only a small part of your full psychological reality? Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, believed that our self-image, what we call the ego, is just the tip of a massive iceberg. Underneath that tip lies a vast ocean of unconscious material. Forgotten memories, suppressed emotions, primal instincts, and universal patterns of behavior we all share as human beings. Jung argued that we are not fully conscious beings. In fact, most of what drives us is hidden deep in the unconscious mind. This idea may sound unsettling at first. After all, if we're not in control of our full selves, then who is? Jung's answer was both surprising and profound. He believed that to become truly conscious, we must first confront the parts of ourselves we've ignored, rejected, or never even noticed. He called this process individuation, a journey toward self-awareness that forces us to meet our inner darkness face to face. Think about how often people react emotionally and then wonder afterward, why did I do that? Or how someone might sabotage their own success without understanding why they fear achieving what they want. These behaviors aren't random. They come from the unconscious, parts of ourselves we haven't integrated into our conscious personality. Jung believed that every individual carries within them a shadow, a hidden self made up of the things we don't want to admit about ourselves. And unless we face this shadow, we are never truly conscious. Jung's views challenge the modern obsession with self-confidence and identity. In today's world, we're encouraged to be ourselves, but no one ever tells us how to find out who that self really is. We believe we are self-aware just because we can reflect on our thoughts or feel emotions. But Jung warned that this superficial awareness is not enough. True consciousness involves diving into the depths of the psyche, uncovering the forces that shape us from within. It's important to realize that the unconscious is not just a personal storage of past experiences. Jung introduced the revolutionary idea of the collective unconscious, a deeper layer of the mind shared by all humans. This level contains archetypes, universal themes and characters like the hero, the mother, or the trickster that show up in myths, stories, and even our dreams. These archetypes influence our behavior whether we know it or not. So the next time you find yourself drawn to certain types of people, repeating similar relationship patterns, or facing internal conflicts, it might be the collective unconscious at work. Jung's theory suggests that much of what we consider free will is actually guided by unconscious patterns. In other words, until we explore what lies beneath the surface, we're simply reacting to life rather than truly living it. This is why Jung believed that modern people suffer not from a lack of knowledge, but from a lack of self-knowledge. He famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So, are you truly conscious? If your understanding of yourself only includes your thoughts, your habits, and your personality traits, then Jung would say you've only just scratched the surface. True self-awareness comes from turning inward, confronting the unknown within, and becoming whole, not perfect, but whole. This journey isn't easy, and it often begins with discomfort, but it leads to something far more powerful than self-confidence. It leads to self-realization. As we begin to unpack Jung's theories throughout this video, we'll go deeper into these hidden aspects of the mind. You'll discover the different parts of your psychological structure, the ego, the shadow, the unconscious, and more, and understand how they interact to shape your life, relationships, and sense of purpose. So, stay with me. This journey might change the way you see yourself forever, because the answer to the question, "Are you truly conscious?" may surprise you. To understand the depth of Jung's theories, we must first understand the man behind them. Carl Gustav Jung was not just a psychologist. He was a pioneer, a seeker of truth, and someone deeply fascinated with the mystery of human behavior. Born in Switzerland in 1875, Jung began his career as a psychiatrist under the mentorship of Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis. But while Freud focused heavily on childhood experiences and sexuality as the roots of behavior, Jung took a different path, one that would revolutionize psychology forever. Jung believed that the mind was far more complex and mystical than Freud had proposed. He saw the human psyche not just as a container of past trauma, but as a living system with layers, energies, and untapped potential. His theories emerged from a blend of science, philosophy, religion, mythology, and art. He studied ancient texts, dreams, and symbols from cultures around the world, not to escape science, but to deepen it. Jung wasn't just trying to treat mental illness. He was on a quest to understand what it means to be human. His break from Freud was not a minor disagreement. It was a philosophical divide. Freud believed the unconscious was a dark place full of repressed desires. Jung agreed in part, but expanded the view. He believed the unconscious was not only a source of hidden fears and urges, but also a treasure chest of creativity, wisdom, and transformation. This bold idea became the foundation of Jungian psychology. Jung's approach was deeply personal. He didn't just study the psyche from the outside. He explored his own inner world through what he called active imagination. During a period of intense inner struggle, Jung began to record dreams, visions, and inner dialogues in what is now known as the Red Book, a beautifully illustrated journal that documents his journey into the depths of the unconscious. These experiences weren't just psychological experiments. They were real confrontations with the unknown parts of himself. This willingness to face his own inner darkness gave Jung profound insights into human behavior. He noticed that people often project their unwanted qualities onto others. For example, someone who refuses to acknowledge their own anger might constantly accuse others of being hostile. This mechanism, Jung observed, wasn't just psychological, it was archetypal. It was a pattern that repeated across people, cultures, and centuries. He called this hidden part of the psyche the shadow, a concept we'll explore in more depth later. But it was this idea that we all carry unseen parts of ourselves that made Jung's work so transformative. Jung's contributions didn't stop at the shadow. He introduced the concept of the persona, the mask we wear to fit into society, and warned that identifying too closely with this mask can lead to a false sense of self. He also described the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine aspects present in all people, and argued that integrating these aspects was essential for psychological balance. What set Jung apart was his deep respect for the mystery of life. He didn't pretend to have all the answers. Instead, he believed that each person must walk their own path toward wholeness, a path filled with symbolic meaning, personal insight, and spiritual discovery. Jung called this process individuation, the gradual integration of all parts of the psyche into a complete, authentic self. Throughout his life, Jung worked not only with patients, but also with scholars, artists, and thinkers from around the world. His influence extended far beyond psychology into fields like literature, film, religion, and philosophy. Thinkers such as Joseph Campbell, Jordan Peterson, and even filmmakers like George Lucas have drawn heavily from Jungian concepts. But perhaps what makes Jung most compelling is his humility. He once said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." For Jung, self-awareness was not a fixed state, but a journey into the unknown parts of ourselves. So, as we continue to explore his theories, remember this: Jung wasn't just building a system of thought. He was inviting you to explore the unexplored within yourself. He believed that each of us holds the key to our own transformation. But first, we must be brave enough to look inward, to question what we believe about ourselves, and to ask the question few dare to ask: what if I'm not who I think I am? Imagine your mind as an iceberg floating in the vast ocean. The small tip that's visible above the water, that's your conscious mind, the part of you that's aware, alert, and thinking in the present moment. It's where your daily thoughts, decisions, and identity seem to live. But beneath the surface lies the massive hidden base of the iceberg. That's your unconscious mind, silent, deep, and far more powerful than most people realize. Carl Jung believed that to understand human behavior, we must first understand this invisible part of the mind. He saw consciousness and the unconscious not as separate worlds, but as interconnected forces shaping every part of our lives. Your conscious mind thinks it's in control, but in truth, it's constantly influenced by unconscious material, your fears, memories, instincts, dreams, and symbols. Jung described consciousness as the realm of the ego, your sense of I or personal identity. It's the part of the mind that knows your name, your goals, your values. But he also warned that the ego is limited. It only sees what it wants to see. It avoids discomfort, clings to certainty, and resists anything that challenges its image. That's why we often experience confusion, anxiety, or emotional reactions we don't fully understand. These are signs that something unconscious is trying to reach the surface. The unconscious, according to Jung, is not just a dumping ground for forgotten memories. It's a living system with layers. The first layer is the personal unconscious, a space where your own experiences, traumas, habits, and suppressed emotions live. For example, you might have forgotten being laughed at as a child, but that forgotten moment could still shape your fear of public speaking today. The personal unconscious is always working behind the scenes, influencing how you react, think, and relate to others. But Jung went further. He proposed a second, deeper layer of the unconscious that was not just personal, but collective. The collective unconscious, he argued, is something we all share as human beings. It contains inherited psychological patterns called archetypes, universal themes and symbols that appear in every culture and every human life. These aren't memories, they're more like blueprints, structures of thought and emotion that shape how we see the world, often without us realizing it. This means your unconscious mind doesn't just belong to you. It connects you to something much older and bigger. That's why people from different parts of the world dream of similar symbols, tell similar stories, or face the same psychological struggles. These shared patterns come from the collective unconscious and are part of what it means to be human. Jung gave special attention to dreams because he believed they are the royal road to the unconscious. In dreams, the conscious mind lets go, and the unconscious begins to speak in symbols. If we learn how to interpret these symbols, Jung said, we can begin to understand the deeper parts of ourselves that are usually hidden. A snake in your dream, for example, might not just be a snake, it could be a symbol of transformation, fear, or forbidden knowledge, depending on your life and culture. But here's where it gets interesting. The unconscious is not just something to be analyzed. Jung believed it's something to be integrated. That means bringing unconscious content into consciousness, slowly, carefully, and with honesty. This integration is what leads to self-awareness, healing, and growth. Ignoring the unconscious, on the other hand, leads to projection, repetition of harmful patterns, and inner conflict. Jung used a beautiful metaphor to explain this process. He said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." In other words, to become truly self-aware, we must first shine a light on the unknown, the uncomfortable, and even the painful parts of ourselves. Only then can we become whole. So the next time you feel stuck, emotional, or confused by your own behavior, don't just ask, "What's wrong with me?" Instead, ask, "What part of me is trying to speak through this?" That question opens the door to the unconscious and to the deeper truth of who you are. In Jung's view, we are not fully conscious beings. We are becoming conscious. And that journey doesn't begin with answers. It begins with curiosity, courage, and the willingness to dive beneath the surface of the mind. At the center of your daily awareness sits something you probably believe is you. It makes decisions, forms opinions, reacts emotionally, and interacts with the world. Carl Jung called this part of the psyche the ego, but not in the way we commonly use the word today. Jung's idea of the ego wasn't about arrogance or pride. Instead, the ego was your conscious identity, the part of you that says, "I am." The ego organizes your thoughts, memories, and perceptions. It's what allows you to say, "I like this," or "I don't believe that." It's how you define yourself, your name, your profession, your nationality, your beliefs. It gives you a stable sense of who you are in the world. And while this sounds essential, and it is, Jung warned us not to mistake the ego for the whole self. In fact, he believed that the ego is just a small part of the total psyche. Imagine the ego as the center of a small spotlight on a vast, dark stage. It can only shine on a few things at once. Everything else, your past, your instincts, your fears, your creativity, even your potential, remains in the shadows, unseen by the ego. And here lies the problem. Most people believe the spotlight is the whole stage. They live under the illusion that their ego is all they are. Jung argued that the ego often builds a false sense of certainty. It wants control, comfort, and consistency. It resists change and hides from anything that might threaten its structure. That's why people often reject parts of themselves they don't like: anger, jealousy, weakness, vulnerability. They push these things into the unconscious and say, "That's not me." But the truth is, these rejected parts don't go away. They simply live outside of the ego's awareness, silently shaping behavior. This leads to a common human experience: projection. When the ego can't accept a certain truth about itself, it sees that truth in other people. Someone who denies their own capacity for manipulation might constantly accuse others of being deceitful. Someone who suppresses their inner anger might see the world as full of hostile people. This is the ego's defense mechanism. It protects itself by blaming the outside world for what it can't face within. Another important concept Jung introduced was the persona, which is closely tied to the ego. The persona is like a mask we wear to function in society. It helps us adapt to social roles and expectations. For example, you might have a professional persona at work, a different one with friends, and another with family. The ego identifies with these masks, believing "This is who I am." But Jung cautioned that identifying too strongly with the persona can disconnect us from the true self. Here's where it gets deeper. The ego isn't bad, it's necessary. Without it, we couldn't function in the world. The problem arises when we think the ego is all there is. Jung believed that true growth begins when we question the ego's version of reality. When we ask, "Is this really who I am, or just who I've learned to be?" That's the moment when the journey toward self-awareness begins. This journey challenges the ego. It asks it to let go of control, to open up to uncertainty, and to accept that it doesn't have all the answers. That's why people often resist inner work. It feels like a threat to their identity. But Jung saw this not as a breakdown, but as a breakthrough. When the ego becomes flexible, when it can admit what it doesn't know, it begins to serve a greater purpose: integration. Ultimately, Jung believed that the ego should become the gateway to the deeper self, not the ruler of the psyche. By becoming aware of its limits, the ego can begin to listen to the unconscious, communicate with the shadow, and cooperate with the broader self. This is the beginning of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. So the next time you say, "That's just who I am," pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is that your true self speaking, or just your ego trying to stay in control? Because what you think is you might only be the smallest part of a much larger truth. Deep within the layers of your unconscious lies a part of you that you rarely see or admit exists. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the hidden side of your personality that holds everything you reject, deny, or suppress. It's not necessarily evil or dangerous. It's simply the part of you that doesn't fit your self-image. And here's the truth Jung wanted us to confront. Until you face your shadow, you cannot be truly conscious. From childhood, we begin to create a version of ourselves that is acceptable to our family, culture, religion, and society. We learn what's good and what's bad, and we act accordingly. Traits like obedience, kindness, or success are praised, while anger, selfishness, or vulnerability may be punished or shamed. So we push the unwanted parts down into the unconscious and forget them, but they don't disappear. They form the shadow. The shadow is made up of all the things you'd rather not acknowledge. Your hidden fears, dark desires, insecurities, prejudices, and impulses. It's the part of you that can be jealous, judgmental, manipulative, or even cruel. But it also holds your repressed strengths, like assertiveness, passion, or creativity, that you were never allowed to express. Jung insisted that the shadow is not just the bad within you, it's the unknown. And in that unknown lies immense potential. Most people try to avoid the shadow. It's uncomfortable. It challenges your identity. But Jung believed that the shadow must be confronted, not destroyed. He famously said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This means growth comes not from denying the darkness within, but by understanding it and integrating it. So, how does the shadow show up in your life? One of the clearest ways is through projection. When you meet someone who annoys you for no clear reason, someone who triggers a strong emotional response, you might be seeing a part of yourself in them. For example, if you're uncomfortable with your own ambition, you might judge others as arrogant or greedy. If you've suppressed your anger, you may attract controlling or aggressive people and blame them for your discomfort. This isn't easy to admit. Most people believe they are objective and fair in how they judge others, but Jung warned that what irritates us most in others is often what we haven't accepted in ourselves. Projection is the ego's way of saying, "That's not me, it's them." But in truth, the shadow is trying to speak. It's asking to be seen. Another way the shadow appears is in our dreams. Jung saw dreams as messages from the unconscious, and often the shadow takes the form of a threatening figure, like a monster, a criminal, or a dark stranger. These symbols represent the parts of ourselves we've avoided. When we ignore them, they gain power. But when we listen and reflect, we begin to understand. The process of confronting the shadow is not about guilt or shame. It's about honesty. It's about asking yourself, what have I rejected in myself? What am I afraid others will see in me? Where am I pretending? By answering these questions, you begin the process of integration, bringing the shadow into consciousness. And here's the paradox. When you face your shadow, you don't become darker, you become whole. You gain strength, clarity, and authenticity. You no longer need to hide or project. You stop fearing parts of yourself and start owning them. This is what Jung meant by becoming individuated, becoming a complete conscious individual. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your mirror. It reveals the parts of you that have been buried, not because they are wrong, but because they were misunderstood. When you embrace your shadow, you stop living a divided life. You stop running from your truth. And you begin to see yourself, not as perfect, but as real. So next time you feel a strong reaction to someone, or you find yourself in the same conflict again and again, pause. Ask, what part of me have I ignored? Because your shadow isn't there to hurt you, it's there to wake you up. Every day you interact with the world through a carefully crafted image, a version of yourself shaped by expectations, culture, and the roles you play. This is what Carl Jung called the persona. The word comes from Latin and originally referred to the masks worn by actors in ancient theater, and that's exactly how Jung saw it. A mask we wear to play our part in society. The persona is not your true self. It's a social identity, the face you show to the world to gain acceptance, approval, and belonging. You might have one persona at work, another among friends, and yet another with family. These masks help you fit in and function in different environments. They are necessary. Without a persona, you wouldn't be able to live in society. You'd seem strange, raw, or even threatening. But there's a danger. The longer you wear the mask, the more you might start believing it's who you really are. That's where Jung raised the alarm. He warned that people often over-identify with the persona. For example, a successful businessman might believe he is his career. A kind teacher might believe she is always nurturing even when she's exhausted. The problem? Everything that doesn't fit the persona gets pushed into the shadow. This false identity limits your self-awareness. It forces you to deny parts of yourself that are inconvenient or uncomfortable. Over time, your life becomes a performance, habitual, scripted, and emotionally distant. You may feel a vague sense of emptiness, but not know why. That's the cost of living through the persona. You're accepted by others, but you lose touch with yourself. Jung emphasized that the persona is not inherently bad. It's essential for interacting with the world. The issue arises when we forget that it's a role, not a reflection of the whole self. If you always present yourself as strong, when do you get to feel vulnerable? If you're always agreeable, when do you express disagreement? This kind of imbalance leads to internal conflict, anxiety, and inauthenticity. The persona can also be shaped by cultural and social pressures. From an early age, we learn what behaviors are rewarded and what are punished. We begin editing ourselves, smiling when we're sad, staying silent when we want to speak. Over time, these edits become habits, and the real self gets buried under layers of performance. Many people live their entire lives like this, polished on the outside, but deeply disconnected on the inside. So how do we begin to move beyond the persona? First, we must recognize that we are more than our roles. Your job, your social identity, your appearance, these are just parts of the story. They are not the whole truth of who you are. Jung encouraged people to examine their persona with honesty. Ask yourself, what image am I trying to maintain? What am I afraid people will see if I drop the act? Second, pay attention to discomfort. When you feel drained, fake, or restless in certain situations, it may be because your persona is overworking itself. It's holding up an image that no longer fits you. These moments of tension are invitations to go inward and ask, what part of me have I abandoned to keep up this performance? Third, Jung advised creating space for the authentic self to emerge. This doesn't mean destroying your persona, it means softening it, letting it become more flexible, more real. Start expressing thoughts you usually hide. Say no when you want to. Admit confusion when you don't have all the answers. These small acts chip away at the mask and reveal the person underneath. Jung believed that the goal was not to get rid of the persona, but to bring it into alignment with the deeper self. A healthy persona becomes a true reflection of your inner world, not a cover for it. When your outer expression matches your inner truth, you begin to feel whole, alive, and free. In the end, the persona is just a tool. It should serve your growth, not control it. The real question is not, what mask are you wearing, but what part of you is still hidden beneath it? Because only when you take the mask off, even briefly, can you meet the person you truly are. And that person is far more powerful, complex, and beautiful than any role you've ever played. Carl Jung believed that the central purpose of human life is not just to survive, succeed, or even be happy. It is to become whole, to fully know and integrate all aspects of yourself. He called this process individuation. Unlike simply growing up or becoming more mature, individuation is a deep psychological and spiritual journey toward discovering who you truly are beneath the layers of ego, persona, and shadow. At the heart of individuation is a simple but powerful idea. You are not born complete, you become. Throughout life, you are presented with challenges, relationships, emotions, and inner conflicts not to punish you, but to reveal the many sides of your inner self. Every struggle is an opportunity for growth, for uncovering a hidden part of you that wants to be seen, healed, or expressed. But the journey of individuation begins with a breakdown of the ego's illusions. You start to realize that the roles you play, the identity you've constructed, and the goals you chase don't capture the full truth of who you are. You begin to ask deeper questions. Why do I feel disconnected from myself? Why do I repeat certain patterns? What part of me have I been avoiding? These questions mark the beginning of the path inward. The process of individuation often starts in moments of emotional pain, inner conflict, or crisis. Jung believed these moments are not signs of weakness. They are calls from the self. The self in Jungian psychology is the totality of your being. It includes the conscious and unconscious, light and dark, known and unknown. While the ego says, I am this, the self says, you are more. As you begin to confront your shadow, question your persona, and expand your awareness beyond the ego, you start to integrate the disowned parts of yourself. This doesn't mean fixing what's broken. It means accepting what's been hidden. Individuation is about uniting opposites within you. Strength and softness, confidence and doubt, light and darkness. It's about becoming real, not perfect. Jung saw dreams, active imagination, and deep reflection as tools for individuation. These practices allow the unconscious to speak, often in symbols and metaphors, guiding you toward inner truths that logic alone can't reach. A lion in your dream may represent power you've been afraid to claim. A falling building might symbolize the collapse of a false identity. Interpreting these images helps you understand what your deeper self is trying to teach you. One of the most important aspects of individuation is reclaiming responsibility for your life. Instead of blaming others, society, or fate, You begin to ask, what does this situation reveal about me? What lesson am I meant to learn here? This shift in perspective is empowering. You stop running from your patterns and begin transforming them. But individuation is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong process. You never reach a final version of yourself. Instead, you keep unfolding layer by layer, becoming more conscious, more integrated, and more alive. This journey doesn't isolate you. It connects you more deeply to others. When you become more whole, you develop greater empathy, clarity, and authenticity. You stop projecting your inner conflicts onto others and start relating from a place of truth. Importantly, individuation is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming yourself, the person you were always meant to be, beneath the noise of expectations and fear. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That is the gift of individuation, the discovery that the answers you seek outside are already inside, waiting for you to listen. So when you feel lost, uncertain, or divided within yourself, remember this: you are not failing, you are being called. The path is not easy, but it is deeply rewarding. Each step you take toward your authentic self brings you closer to inner peace, purpose, and power. And that journey, according to Jung, is the very definition of a meaningful life." In Carl Jung's psychology, the self is the ultimate destination of your inner journey. It is not just another part of your psyche, it is the totality of who you are. The self includes your ego, your shadow, your persona, and everything conscious and unconscious within you. It is your inner guide, your deepest center, and the source of true wisdom and balance. If the ego is the part of you that says, "I am," then the self is the quiet presence that says, "You are so much more." Most people live their lives from the limited perspective of the ego. They identify with roles, jobs, relationships, and societal definitions of success. But Jung believed that the self is the true center of your being, not the ego. The ego thinks it's in charge, but it's really just a smaller circle within a much larger whole. The self is like a magnet, silently pulling you toward wholeness, even when you're unaware of it. You might ask, if the self is always there, why don't we feel it? Jung's answer was that we become disconnected from it by over-identifying with our ego and by suppressing the parts of ourselves that don't fit our identity. The more we deny the shadow, hide behind the persona, and cling to illusions, the farther we drift from the self. But here's the profound truth: the self never leaves you. It waits. It communicates through symbols, dreams, emotions, and synchronicities, moments that feel mysteriously meaningful. The self is often represented in dreams and myths as mandalas, circles, wise elders, or divine figures. These images reflect a deep inner order and unity. Jung found that people who began the process of individuation often spontaneously dreamt of circles, crosses, or balanced opposites. These weren't random. They were the psyche's way of expressing the presence of the self and its drive for balance and integration. So how does the self guide us? Often through crisis, when life doesn't go as planned, when the ego's story breaks down. Those are the moments when the self begins to speak more loudly. The depression, anxiety, confusion, or emptiness we feel in these times isn't just pain. It's the self pushing us to wake up. It's saying, this version of you is too small, there's more. But the self doesn't demand that we become perfect. It asks us to become whole. That means embracing our flaws, wounds, and contradictions. It means recognizing that being fully human includes joy and sorrow, strength and fear, clarity and confusion. True inner peace doesn't come from eliminating the parts we don't like. It comes from accepting them and weaving them into a larger, more authentic identity. This is why Jung saw the self as not just psychological, but spiritual. It connects you to something greater than yourself. not necessarily in a religious sense, but in a deeply human one. The self is what gives life meaning. It's what calls artists to create, seekers to explore, and ordinary people to grow beyond their limitations. It's the voice that says, "You are here for a reason." The journey to the self is not easy. It requires the courage to look inward, to face the unknown, and to question everything you've been taught to believe about who you are. But it is also the most rewarding path you can take, because in discovering the self, you don't become someone new. You return to someone ancient, powerful, and deeply familiar, your truest self. When you live in alignment with the self, you feel a sense of inner peace that doesn't depend on external success. You make choices that reflect your values, not just your fears. You stop seeking validation from others and begin trusting your inner voice. Life may still be challenging, but it becomes meaningful. You are no longer just surviving, you are becoming. So the next time you feel lost, ask not, "What should I do?" but "Who am I becoming?" Because the self is always calling, and if you listen closely enough, you'll hear it whisper, "Come home." Carl Jung believed that dreams are not just random images or meaningless stories your brain creates while you sleep. Instead, he saw them as the direct language of the unconscious mind, a mysterious realm where the hidden parts of yourself, including your shadow, persona, and self, communicate with you in symbols and stories. Dreams are like a secret message, inviting you to understand what is going on inside your psyche beyond the reach of everyday awareness. Unlike the ego's logical and linear thinking, the unconscious speaks in images, metaphors, and emotions. This is why dreams can feel strange, confusing, or even disturbing. But their oddness is not a flaw, it's a clue. Your unconscious is trying to get your attention, often using symbols that can be interpreted to reveal insights about your inner life. Jung famously said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." This means that while the external world captures your attention, your inner world, the place of dreams, holds the key to awakening your consciousness. Dreams can reveal parts of your personality you don't see during the day, unresolved conflicts, hidden desires, or warnings about your current path. One of the unique things about Jung's approach to dreams is that he didn't see them as simple messages to be decoded with a fixed meaning. Instead, he believed dreams are personal and symbolic, and their interpretation depends on the dreamer's life, feelings, and experiences. For example, a snake in one person's dream could represent healing and transformation, while in another's it might symbolize danger or betrayal. Jung also identified common themes and archetypes that frequently appear in dreams across cultures and individuals. These include figures like the wise old man, the great mother, the hero, or the trickster. These archetypes are universal patterns in the collective unconscious, a shared psychological inheritance of humanity. When these figures appear in your dreams, they bring messages from a deeper collective level of the psyche that transcends your personal story. Dreams can also be a powerful tool for integrating the shadow. Often the shadow appears in dreams as dark, frightening, or rejected figures. Instead of turning away, Jung encouraged engaging with these dream images with curiosity and compassion. By doing so, you begin to acknowledge and accept the hidden parts of yourself that the ego has denied. This process can reduce internal conflicts and bring new energy to your waking life. Many people experience dreams during times of transition or crisis. Jung believed these moments are crucial because the unconscious is actively trying to guide the conscious self toward growth and healing. Paying attention to recurring dreams, vivid images, or strong emotions during sleep can help you uncover what your inner self wants you to understand. To work with your dreams, Jung suggested practices like keeping a dream journal, where you write down your dreams as soon as you wake up. Recording details the people, colors, feelings, and events helps you recognize patterns and symbols over time. Reflecting on your dreams with questions like, "What does this image remind me of?" or "How does this dream relate to my life?" can open up new insights. Active imagination is another technique Jung recommended. It involves consciously engaging with dream images or symbols while awake, talking to them, drawing them, or imagining conversations with dream figures. This creative dialogue helps bridge the gap between conscious and unconscious and fosters inner integration. In essence, dreams are a bridge to self-awareness. They provide guidance, reveal what you might be avoiding, and point you toward the path of individuation. By learning to listen to your dreams, you open yourself to a deeper wisdom that lives inside you, a wisdom that can transform confusion into clarity, fragmentation into wholeness. So next time you wake up from a vivid or strange dream, don't dismiss it. Instead, lean into it. Ask, what is my unconscious trying to tell me? What part of myself needs my attention? Your dreams are waiting with answers, and with an invitation to know yourself more fully than ever before. Carl Jung introduced the fascinating concept of synchronicity to describe meaningful coincidences that seem to defy ordinary explanation. Imagine thinking about an old friend you haven't spoken to in years, and then unexpectedly bumping into them the very next day, or dreaming of a symbol and then seeing it repeatedly in your waking life. These events aren't just random chance, Jung suggested. They are moments when the inner world of your psyche and the outer world of events align in a way that feels deeply significant. Synchronicity challenges the conventional idea that everything happens purely by cause and effect. Instead, Jung proposed that there is a causal connecting principle, a mysterious link between your inner state and external happenings. When this connection surfaces, it sends a powerful message from the unconscious, often guiding you toward insight, healing, or a new direction. For Jung, synchronicities were evidence of the interconnectedness of mind and matter, spirit and reality. They show that your life is not just a series of random occurrences, but a meaningful story where symbols and events reflect your inner growth. This is why Jung saw synchronicity as a natural companion to his ideas about the unconscious and the self. It reveals how the invisible inner world and visible outer world mirror each other. People often experience synchronicities during important moments of change, crisis, or spiritual awakening, when your unconscious is actively trying to communicate through dreams, symbols, or feelings. The universe seems to respond in kind. You might see repeating numbers, overhear a phrase that resonates with your current struggle, or experience a chance meeting that shifts your perspective. These moments feel like signs nudging you to pay attention. But what makes synchronicity truly powerful is the meaning you assign to it. Jung emphasized that it's not the coincidence itself, but your awareness of its significance that matters. When you notice and reflect on these events, you open yourself to a deeper level of self-understanding. Synchronicity invites you to connect with your intuition and the wisdom of the self, helping you navigate life with more clarity and purpose. Skeptics might dismiss synchronicity as mere coincidence or confirmation bias, but Jung argued that dismissing these experiences overlooks the profound psychological impact they have. Even if there is no scientific cause, the experience of meaningful connection can spark insight, transformation, and healing. You can cultivate an openness to synchronicity by developing mindfulness and awareness in your daily life. Pay attention to moments that stand out, strange patterns, or feelings of déjà vu. Keep a journal of these experiences. Reflect on what they might mean for your inner journey. Over time, you'll notice that these meaningful coincidences often appear right when you need guidance the most. Synchronicity reminds us that life is not just mechanical or random. It is alive with meaning, mystery, and magic. It encourages us to trust that there is an underlying order to things, even when we can't see it. This trust opens the door to deeper self-awareness and a richer experience of existence. In the end, synchronicity is a beautiful invitation to live with wonder, to see the ordinary as extraordinary, to listen closely to the whispers of the universe, and to recognize that your life is woven into a vast, meaningful tapestry. When you embrace this perspective, you begin to realize that you are not alone. The universe itself is speaking your language, guiding you home to your true self. Carl Jung's exploration of consciousness goes far beyond the common understanding of simply being awake or aware. For Jung, being truly conscious means embracing the fullness of your inner world, both the light and the shadow, the known and the unknown, and living in a way that is authentic, whole, and deeply connected to your true self. Most people think consciousness is just about thinking clearly or being alert. But Jung revealed that consciousness is much more complex. It is a dynamic process of constant growth and integration. It involves not only your waking thoughts, but also the parts of your psyche hidden in the unconscious, those suppressed feelings, forgotten memories, and unexplored desires that influence your behavior every day without you even realizing it. The surprising part of Jung's answer is that you cannot become truly conscious without facing your shadow. The shadow contains all the parts of yourself you reject or deny, your fears, weaknesses, impulses, and unacceptable traits. We naturally want to avoid these aspects because they feel uncomfortable or shameful. But Jung insisted that if you ignore or suppress your shadow, it gains power over you, often causing problems through projections, seeing your unwanted traits in others rather than yourself. True self-awareness begins when you turn toward your shadow with honesty and courage. This is not an easy process. It involves deep self-reflection and sometimes painful truths. But it is the key to freeing yourself from unconscious patterns that hold you back. By acknowledging your darker sides, you reclaim control over them and reduce their hidden influence on your life. Jung also emphasized that true consciousness involves integrating the different parts of your personality, the persona, the shadow, the anima or animus, your inner feminine or masculine, and ultimately, the self. It is a journey of becoming more whole, where your outer behavior aligns with your inner reality. Another essential part of Jung's answer is that consciousness is not just individual, but collective. We are connected through the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of archetypes and symbols inherited from humanity's past. Becoming conscious means recognizing this connection, understanding that your personal growth is linked to the larger human story, and embracing your role in it. Jung's view of consciousness is also deeply spiritual. He believed that true awareness opens you to the mystery and sacredness of life. It helps you find meaning beyond material success or social status. When you are truly conscious, you experience a sense of purpose and peace that comes from living authentically. In practical terms, becoming truly conscious requires ongoing effort and practices such as self-reflection, dream work, active imagination, and sometimes guidance from therapy or mentorship. It means questioning your beliefs, habits, and assumptions regularly. It means being willing to face discomfort and uncertainty instead of running from them. The reward for this difficult but transformative process is immense. You gain freedom from unconscious control, a stronger sense of identity, and deeper relationships with others. You stop reacting to life based on past wounds or societal masks and start responding from your true center. In summary, Jung's surprising answer to the question, "Are you truly conscious?" is that true consciousness is a lifelong journey of self-discovery and integration. It requires embracing all parts of yourself, light and dark, known and unknown, and connecting with something greater than the ego. It's about becoming whole, authentic, and deeply alive. And it's a journey open to anyone willing to look inward and face themselves honestly. So ask yourself, am I ready to meet my shadow, to let go of false masks, to awaken to the vastness of my inner world? Because only then can you become truly conscious and live a life that is not just awake, but profoundly awake.